How's it going, everybody? Fully Baked here. This is part 3/part 5 of the Sonic Colors review. As in the episodes that I'm doing, this is technically the third part, but in the context of the actual review, this is the fifth part, if that makes sense. In this episode, we'll be talking about the soundtrack, which last time I said was a pretty big step up over what we talked about, which was the Wisps. Thankfully, I wasn't lying, so I'm just excited to do this. Let's get into it. Sonic Colors has one of, if not my favorite soundtrack in any video game, rivaled by Undertale and the Doom remakes, which was probably indicated by this video, which you should check out. Now you may say, you can't feasibly go over every song in Sonic Colors' soundtrack, that's absurd. Well, watch me. The tracks are in the order in which they appear on the album, so here we go. Reach for the Stars kicks this off, and it's honestly such a great mood setter. It's upbeat, happy, and energetic. The lyrics are pretty inspiring, and it's very fitting to have a game set in space be about, you know, space. That was probably intentional now that I think about it. This song just kicks you right into high gear and would make anyone immediately get the tone of the game, as well as probably get you in the mood it's going for. What's great is, even removed from the context of the game, it's such an awesome and uplifting song, and it's easily a highlight of this already star-studded soundtrack. And this is only just getting us started. The main theme of the game, which plays over the opening title screen, is kind of a remix of Reach for the Stars in orchestral form, which I guess you could consider a leitmotif throughout this game's soundtrack. This opening theme kind of reels back from Reach in that while it's still a great song, it's more so calming. But damn if this doesn't give off the vibes of a space adventure, I don't know what does. Don't look at me, Mario Galaxy, but anyway, this is a great song. The next song is the all-infamous Tropical Resort Act 1, and for good reason. All the elements of this song really work for me, from the guitars and bass to the synth to the drums, it all really meshes together nicely. Weirdly enough, I can somehow get on board with the idea of this being the theme to a space casino, because it really nails that vibe. I shouldn't really have to say that much about it, it's honestly iconic in a way not many other video game BGMs can claim. Like I said with Reach, this is definitely a highlight. From here we move on to the area theme for Tropical Resort, which is probably one of my favorite area themes as well. Honestly, Tropical Resort is one of my favorite opening levels in gaming, and this theme doesn't hurt a bit. This song is more so a vibe than anything else, something you can really mellow out to. It's simultaneously a nice break from the upbeat level themes and a great song in its own right with some boppin' synth parts. Robots and Wisps is the first cutscene song, and it fits the situation pretty well, if not a bit too well. It's about robots chasing down wisps in order to capture them, and it's pretty high octane for that action. Heck, one of the robots in this cutscene isn't even chasing the wisp, so yeah, it fits that motif, even if it does go a bit overboard. The song ends with Sonic becoming the Laser Wisp, which the music appropriately complements with a crescendo. Yeah, this song is pretty good. Tropical Resort Act 2 is admittedly my least favorite song under the Tropical Resort label, but even then, it isn't bad. I like the other two level themes for the use of guitar as a rhythm instrument, which this theme ditches for a synth lead instead, which is good, but not as boppin' as the guitars. That being said, we still do get some pretty fun and fast guitar lines in this song. And this song is still overall a jam, just not as much as the other Tropical Resort themes in my opinion. Laser Wisp song is very fitting for the power-up, being very fast and boppy, moving all over the place. Because of the way that the Laser Wisp works, you probably won't hear that much of this song, but I think that's okay, considering after using it, it'll probably be followed up by some satisfying trick, which the music complements, making it a good fit for the power-up. Tropical Resort Act 3 is very similar to Act 1. I think this one is slower, but honestly, it's hard to tell. It's got the same vibe going on, that being fast-paced jamming and fun. The main difference I found between both songs is the guitar part goes on a bit longer in this act, which in my mind gives it a slight edge over Act 1 musically. Excluding that, I still prefer Act 1 for its faster pace, which I think in general just complements the stages more. Because this is, for all intents and purposes, a tutorial world, it has a lot of linear running sections which the music complements more with Act 1 as opposed to Act 3. Still, nonetheless, it's still a great song that's really easy to vibe to, and I have to appreciate that. The stage clear music is very good. It's another use of Reach in the soundtrack, but it's very quick and lasts just long enough for the results to show up, meaning it never really gets too annoying, like the moon collecting sound from Mario Odyssey. I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing this at the end of a stage. Dr. Eggman Appears really lives up to its name. It's minor and dark, foreboding, and not too heavy-handed. Plus, it's got a muted trumpet. It really hits out of the park with these little hits that come in every now and then that really drive home the evilness of Eggman. Halfway through this song, Sonic appears, which the music indicates by becoming very legato in the horns, then successfully translates the confusion of Sonic by Eggman with the last third of the song. And it ends with the cliffhanger that sets up the Boss Appears music surprisingly well. Ferris Wheel Boss Appears is a nice little intro song to this boss, and in tandem sets up a leitmotif that's used across the rest of the boss intro themes, including even the final boss. Due to this track being 20 seconds long, it's a bit hard to talk about, but I've said what matters for this song. It's foreboding, it sets up the boss well, and it creates a nice leitmotif. It's a good song. Versus Rotatatron and Refreshatron is an awesome boss theme. It's quite dramatic, fast-paced, has these great little descending hits that really complement the boss aesthetic. The drums are a nice mix of both reserved yet in your face. It's a great song. It really gives off a sense of urgency, and that's what a good boss theme is supposed to do. Out of the 4 boss themes in the game, I'd say this is my third favorite because it's got some stiff competition. Yakker's Plea is quaint, nice, and maybe slightly overused. This is the song I used in the opening of my Portal video, which you should check out, I'm just saying. The song's main use is to be in the background for when the main characters get up to something weird and wacky, which this song nails perfectly. It's not really meant to convey any epic themes or anything like that, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to do that. My only real problem is it feels like it's overused, but I can look past that because it's genuinely just a nice song. It does what it wants to, and then it gets out, which I really appreciate. Robots Lost and Found is pretty much the enemy's version of Yakker's Plea, but this one isn't overused. It plays over my favorite cutscene in the game, and is really similar to Yakker's Plea with the exception of the ending. It does what it wants, then gets out. However, the ending of the song crescendos up really quickly to reveal the arm stuck in the cannon, which the music complements perfectly. So this song is a good mix of cartoonish nature and foreshadowed evil. Good job, Robots Lost and Found. Next up is the world map, which honestly feels like it's out of a Mario and Sonic sports game. That isn't bad though, it's very epic and really feels like you're in a planetary and space adventure. One thing I especially like is the planet themes themselves are mostly self-contained and thematic, whereas this one is really emblematic of a space adventure, making you excited to choose where you're gonna go next. I can't really sum it up, it just feels grand and epic and uplifting. This is another highlight, I love this song. Sweet Mountain is probably one of my favorite selections of act songs out of the whole soundtrack. Where sometimes the sounds can feel a little underwhelming or a bit unfitting, these ones try something completely different by just being awesome songs, not worried about theming and more so worried about being damn good songs. Well, that sounds like it might backfire and a possible recipe for disaster, because a lot of the songs I like in this game are themed. These act themes bypass that and shift into just flat out awesome song territory. It has awesome everything, from horns to guitar to drums to even bass. These act themes are jams through and through. And this one kicking it off is emblematic of that by being super pumped up and filled with epic flowy lines that really get you excited. While it's not my favorite Sweet Mountain act theme, it doesn't make it any worse. This song is pretty much awesome incarnate and I love it for it. Sweet Mountain is probably my third favorite overworld theme, trumped only by Tropical Resort and one we'll get to later. Like the act themes I mentioned a second ago, this one doesn't particularly go for matching the world themes, but rather tries to match with the level themes. And like I said, when these themes are more focused on being genuinely good songs rather than being concerned with theming, in this case it works wonders. It has a lot of what I like in the level themes as well. Fun guitar and bass, piano and synth parts are nice, the brass goes surprisingly hard. It's an overall bop of an overworld theme that goes very well in tandem with the level themes. We move on to Sweet Mountain Act 2, not only the best second act theme in the game, not only the best Sweet Mountain song, but the best song off the entirety of the first album. It's similar to Act 1 with the forefront guitar part, but the drums in the back go a lot harder, which could really be said for the entirety of the song, considering it's much faster than Act 1. About halfway through the song, it kinda breaks and goes into a full-on guitar solo, which sounds very awesome. The brass hits in this song are more sporadic, which kind of reveals their very soundboard type use, but honestly, I didn't mind because it endears me to its use in this track and the other acts that use it. Honestly, I love pretty much everything about this song, from the lead guitar to the drums to the off-the-hook bass to the brass becoming more computerized. It all works together to form one of the best songs in the entire game. It's honestly one of the reasons Sweet Mountain is a world that I love to revisit. Yellow Drill's music kinda hurts my ears, but I can't deny it certainly fits the idea of crudely drilling underground with moles and stuff. The somewhat unfortunate part is, while the music is fitting, it hurts your ears, and because the Wisp lasts the longest out of any Wisp in the game, it's the track you have to listen to the longest. The Wisp tracks get worst, but this one is fairly disappointing and annoying. It's weird to call Sweet Mountain Act 3 the odd one out in the realm of Sweet Mountain Act themes, considering the tonal overhaul of the second act, but in my mind, this one feels the most different. This is probably the weakest of the Sweet Mountain Act themes as well. Don't think for a second I dislike it though, because you'd be very wrong in that assumption. But in direct comparison to the first one's simplicity and the second one's godliness, this one feels like it relies too much on the idea of standing out, quote unquote. The solo parts of the bass and guitar are great, but its reliance on the brass section isn't as good of an idea as I think they were hoping it would be. So overall, this song is still very good. It's just the weakest out of the Sweet Mountain tracks, which it had to be one of them, unfortunately. Sugar Armada Appears is pretty good, once again making good use of Eggman's theme. It's actually surprisingly foreboding when removed from context because the Armada itself really isn't that imposing of a threat. Also, this is the first boss song to feature the little stinger at the end of it, which is a nice little setup. So yeah, this song works well to set up the boss that follows it, as well as being a nice introduction to the singer brass section. Versus Captain Jelly and Admiral Jelly is admittedly my least favorite boss theme in the game, but only by process of elimination in direct comparison to all of the other great boss themes in this game. It had to be one of them, and I chose this one. The reason this is my least favorite is because I find it the least threatening. The first one has a surprisingly intense descending part which gives it that intense edge, and the others I haven't mentioned yet all have their own intensifying qualities to them. This song does have that guitar part in the forefront that sounds pretty cool, but the synth just sounds a bit too soft. It makes sense in context, but that doesn't mean I automatically like them. So in direct comparison to all the other boss themes in the game, this one is unfortunately the weakest one, but that's not to say it's bad. It's still a boss theme in a Sonic Colors game, you know it's gotta be good. Boss stage clear is quick, but honestly I really like it. It takes the normal level clear theme and just adds on it a bit more. It accentuates the satisfying feeling of taking a boss down, which I really appreciate. Despite how short it is, I really appreciate what it's able to accomplish in such a short time span. Results Screen is a song I never thought I would hear past the first 7 seconds of because I never really gave this one a listen. Once again, this one calls back to Reach and makes it very triumphant feeling, which makes sense for a result screen. In the back of the song there are, and I can't really describe it any better than this, Indiana Jones style rises in the flutes, which really drives the accomplishment home of beating a level. This one is all brass, so it's not intense, but it's also rewarding, which I heavily respect. Like a lot of the songs in this game, I don't think I'll ever get tired of listening to this song at the end of levels. Lastly, on the first album, we have the Save Screen song, which is surprisingly relaxing. Like before, it drops the idea of intensity and focuses solely on being relaxing, which it accomplishes tenfold. I could honestly listen to the violins in the song all day, and the occasional vibraphone hits feel weirdly cute. All in all, this song is the perfect idea of a rest, and a great way to cap off the first album of this game. Kicking off the second album, we have this quick little Sonic Colors jingle that I honestly couldn't tell you where in the game it's placed. I like it, as fleeting as it is, but of all the tracks in the game, this is probably the one I can't really recall where it takes place. But what I can tell you is it's certainly triumphant, which I feel complements the scene I think it's supposed to be attached to. Again, I literally have no idea what that scene is supposed to be though. Following this, we have the actual theme to Sonic Colors. Before I saw this, I thought it was Reach, but apparently this is the theme. Obviously the tracks sound kind of the same in some parts, but they're different genre-wise. You can blatantly hear it in this theme. It actually has a lot of songs that will continue to recur through the rest of the soundtrack, from options menu music to level clear themes. This theme is massively influential to other tracks in the game's soundtrack, and on top of being a great orchestral piece, makes for an all-round heavy hitter of a song. We then move on to possibly my favorite world in the game, Starlight Carnival, specifically with its Act 1 track. I love this one for a lot of reasons. The drums are off the damn hook, the synth is very flowy, uplifting, and strong. The bass is pretty effective and it has all these nice little background noises to it that really make it awesome. The highlight of the song is definitely around halfway through when the drums switch from beats 2 and 4 to beats 1 and 3, which just feels really satisfying to hear. All that said, this track is my second favorite Starlight Carnival song. Next up is my favorite Starlight Carnival song, the map theme. I love every instrument presented here, from the synth to drums to bells to more synth to even more synth. If you couldn't tell already, Starlight Carnival has a synth-based sound to it. And for a guy who wants to make an upcoming video about an underrated R&B album, spoiler alert, this synth is still my favorite aesthetic in the game. And when chilling on the map up here, the synth is at its top notch, so it really comes through full force. Next to Sweet Mountain, if I'm just chilling out in Sonic Colors, this is definitely a place of choice. Then we get to another Wisp, this time being the Green Wisp. If you saw the last video, you probably know how I feel about this song. I suggest going to check that one out before continuing here. But to sum up my feelings on it, it's very floaty and nice. Yep, can't sum it up much better than that. It should really speak volumes when the second act theme is my least favorite from Starlight Carnival, yet it still slaps hard. Massive props to the wub part in the back, it really just drives this song home. Other than that backing part, it's honestly really similar to Act 1, just sped up and cut a bit. Sure, it may be a little weaker, but the backing part along with the doubling of drums almost puts it on par with the first one. So yeah, like I said, something should be said about how this song is still great, yet is my least favorite song from Starlight. And this hype train doesn't stop yet, because we move on to my favorite Wisp in the game, the blue one. That synth, can probably speak for itself. Listen to that! Yeah, you can probably understand why it's my favorite Wisp theme. Now you'll understand why the second act theme is my least favorite in Starlight Carnival, because Act 3 is basically just a remix of the already strong Act 1 theme. There's not much to comment on here that I haven't already said about the Act 1 theme, except that the remix is pretty fun, even if not my preferred of the two. One could, in theory, dock points for an originality, but it's a bit hard to do that when you're having so much fun listening to the music that you don't really care. Moving on to another boss introduction, we have SO1 Frigate Appears, which is my favorite of the boss intro themes. Not only is it foreboding like the other themes, but it also ends itself with a nice little held violin note. Other than that, it's very similar to the other boss intro themes. However, I think we should move on to one of the best boss themes in the game as well. Versus Orkin and Scullion is next, and this is my second favorite boss theme. Immediately those guitar hits set up the tone of the boss, that being fast-paced and high action. And damn, this sure is that. The occasional synth descending parts mixed with the weirdly bleak undertone of the whole thing really makes it awesome to fight this thing. And something could be said about not only the fight against the boss, but also the music itself. And even if not, this theme is still awesome. The drums and guitar in particular are highlights, as this song really wouldn't be as effective without them. Weirdly, we move on to the area theme of Planet Wisp next, and the reason this is weird to me is because this is the first world in the game to put its area theme before its Act 1 theme. Not complaining, of course, but the theme itself is a bit weird. For a world like Planet Wisp with its absolutely stellar act themes, this song feels like a fairly substantial step down. It's not even bad, it's light on the ears and it's a nice little song, but it's not as substantial as the act themes, and speaking of which, Act 1 of Planet Wisp is easily one of the most iconic songs in the entire game. That's mainly thanks to the opening, but I digress. Yeah, of all the songs to be iconic, I'm glad this could be one of them. So what's good about this song? Assuming you're listening to it in the back as I talk, I think it should be fairly obvious what it is. The guitar and bass are obvious highlights, but the piano hits are pretty significant. The drums really convey the sense of speed the song provides, and the orchestra in the back is a nice little touch. So yeah, this is definitely the second best song from Planet Wisp. Fun fact, the piano player in this song actually messes up, which is something I didn't notice until going through all these songs. Then we move on to a cutscene song called Wisp Homeworld. This one I'm particularly fond of because it sounds like something out of Wall-E, which I love. This song is pretty interesting in its own right. It plays over a scene of realization that Eggman has a much more powerful hold on the planets than they can imagine. And yep, this theme helps convey that idea. It's fairly foreboding, matching the scene it plays over. The instrumentation, like I said, is very Wall-E-esque. So yeah, this cutscene may be forgettable, but this theme is certainly pretty fun. This is the Orange Wisp theme. It was over before I could even finish writing this segment. Yeah, it's good. Then it's Planet Wisp Act 2, and like Starlight, it should speak volumes when this is my least favorite act theme, yet it still slaps. It's pretty similar to the last one, but with more techno-based instrumentals, from the drums to the more front-forward synth part, it all becomes a bit more techno. It actually fits with the theme of Planet Wisp weirdly enough, with it changing from a more naturalistic setting to a more factorial-looking setting. I didn't make those words up, I swear to God the docs corrected me on that one. This song certainly slaps, even if it is the weakest act theme here. I briefly talked about the Pink Wisps music in part 4, so I'll keep this brief. I don't really like this track, I think it's kind of annoying and the lead synth hurts my ears a bit when I listen to it. Let's just hope the next song redeems this kinda bad one. Planet Wisp Act 3. This is the certifiable bee's knees and is my absolute favorite track in the entire game. The bass slaps. The drums, they go hard. The guitar, nice and reserved, but still a blast. The piano, similar, yet all out at times. Basically, I think this theme is every instrumentalist in this song giving it their all, and it really pays off. It's fairly tonally different from the other act themes in Planet Wisp, but like I've said before, it's hard to care about a minor annoyance when I'm having so much fun. After Planet Wisp in the second album, we come to Gameland, the world I cited as the worst world in the game in part 3. This theme should really be an indication as to why. One of my all-time favorite eras for music and gaming was the Sega Genesis. If you want supporting proof of this, I recommend going to listen to Scrap Yard Zone from Sonic 1 and Hilltop Zone from Sonic 2. They slap! Should Gameland have callbacks to that style of music, I probably would have liked it much more than I do. Which, in all honesty, isn't even that much. I like the pixelated remix of Eggman's theme, but the drums feel kinda weak and the synth doesn't really seem to carry that much weight behind it. I was going to pad this video out a lot, as I assume I already have. But honestly, I need to tap out for the Gameland tracks. Like I said earlier, every song in Gameland is a pixelated remix of each of World 1's act themes. So instead of doing a pseudo in-depth analysis of each one, I'm going to do a quick review of each one explaining how the tracks stack up to the original. Gameland 1 is pretty nice and cute, although I don't like the flutter of the synth on the high parts during the chorus. Other than that, it's pretty satisfying. I feel like the devs knew they couldn't improve on Sweet Mountain, so they didn't really try that hard. Gameland 2 is good, but it feels fairly bland compared to the bombastic nature of the actual Sweet Mountain Act themes. Same thing as last time, except I dislike this one more. Gameland 3 kinda bothers me because the drums are a strong part of Starlight, which this song kinda neuters. It's still pretty nice overall though. The color power of Gameland is a weird standout. I love the hits during the verse, and it's actually an improvement over some of the color themes in the rest of the game. I'll always use a power in Gameland just to listen to this track specifically. Gameland 4 is honestly on par with Planet Wisp's Overworld theme. I like it, it just can't compare to the others. I do really like the drums here though, those are nice. From this point on is actually I haven't talked about yet, so take my word for it on these. Gameland 5 I would say is actually on par with Aquarium Park's music because in my opinion they're all just pretty good. Not really standouts in the soundtrack when taken in a vacuum. Remember when I said Gameland 3 neuters the drums of Starlight? Gameland 6 does the same thing with Asteroid Coaster's guitars. It's good, but like a lot of these, it really can't compare. Take the neuter comment about Gameland 3 and 6 and apply them both to this one. Gameland 7 is just genuinely an overall inferior version of Terminal Velocity Act 1. Granted, nothing can really compare to that, but we'll get into it when we do. Gameland Clear is pretty much just a quick and shortened version of the main Gameland theme, and it's pretty nice. I appreciate the devs going out of their way to make a different level Clear theme for Gameland as opposed to rehashing the main one. It also ends with two pretty opposing octaves from the synth, which sounds pretty nice. Wow, I was able to string this explanation out fairly extensively, huh? The Gameland result screen is a pretty nice remix of the main theme, but put into a major key. I think so, at least. I think this one has less going on in the back than the original, so it doesn't carry as much weight, but it really does fit the aesthetic of Gameland in a level complete theme. I weirdly like the doubling up of the intense hits near the end of the loop. It gives a bit more presence within the soundtrack. So I'm currently on page 21 of this script. To put that into perspective of how much that is, part 1 through 4 went on until page 11. So this segment about the soundtrack has gone on for around half of the current script, and we're only 2/3 of the way through, ending the second album with the Game Over theme. I have a weird soft spot for the Game Over theme in this game. Like a lot of non-level themes, it rips directly from the main orchestral theme and just adds on to it. The reason I think this game's works so well is because it doesn't feel defeatist. It feels like, yeah, you messed up, but don't worry, you can try again. And I really appreciate that, unlike Sonic CDs where they just straight up laugh at you. That concludes the second album, and let's move on to the third. Kicking off album 3, we have the main theme of the opening, aka a shorter version of Reach for the Stars, aka the anime opening version. I think shortening the main theme was a good idea on the devs' part because while I wouldn't be opposed to listening to the whole song, I think the cutscene in-game is perfectly paced and having the whole theme would have dragged it out. As for the song, basically just take about what I said about the original but shorten it down by a bit. Sonic Colors has the most intense option menu music I've ever heard before. It doesn't look that intense, but the music for this place is... goodness. Tone it down there, guys. Once again, it's a variation of the main theme just taken and placed here. Yeah, it's very relaxing and it's a nice break from the fairly bombastic world map theme. Granted, this one is still bombastic, but it's toned down, mainly because it's an options menu. God, guys, turn it down just a little bit. Then we move on to Aquarium Park, starting with its Act 1 theme. I know I kinda made fun of it in the Gameland section, but I honestly like this place's music. It's just that I like every other place's music more. I think the main deterrent for me, in contrast to a place like Starlight Carnival, is I love its aesthetic, but here, I'm just not really that big of a fan. That carries over to some of the instrumentals as well. I'm not a big fan of the lead synth, the way it goes twangy near the end of the loop kinda hurts my ears, but the drums are pretty nice. The backing piano is calming and it's nice on the ears for the most part. Like I said, I like it, just not as much as the others. Aquarium Park's area theme is honestly great. Like, damn, it's just great, really. It's not my favorite, of course, but I really like it. It's really Japanese inspired with some EDM percussion and synth thrown in to give it the sonic edge it needs. It's a surprisingly nice mix of the two sounds that I initially passed on because I didn't think it was that good. The backing strings are also a nice harmony as well as the lead strings. This might just be my favorite song in Aquarium Park for how easy it is on the ears. And I do really mean and appreciate that. Next up we got Aquarium Park Act 2, and this one is a pretty good bop. I like how the drums and synth take the lead here, but it doesn't shy away from the other instruments. For example, the strings and piano still come through full force even if they aren't the forefront. This song features more of the twanginess that I complained back in Act 1, but honestly the improvements made to the other parts are almost redeeming for the annoyance that's caused by the twang. It's not perfect, but I certainly prefer it to Act 1. The underwater remix of the drill power-up is my third favorite Wisp theme in the game, trumped only by the Gameland Wisp theme and the blue/cube music. It's surprisingly nice on the ears, and considering a lot of the time underwater you'll probably be picking up other drills on the way, I really appreciate the fact that this music is just beyond the point of annoyance, so the constant loop doesn't really get on my nerves like some of the other Wisp themes do. Act 3 of Aquarium Park feels like one of the most traditional Sonic songs, if that makes sense. I attribute it mainly to the drums, which takes full force this time around, and generally it makes the song weaker in my opinion. Where the second act was a great mix of both drums and backing tracks, this one has the drums taking center stage and the mixing is just worse as a whole. I prefer Act 1 over this because even though the front part is off-putting, I think the mixing was better than this act. Sonic Colors' Out of Air theme is pretty good in the sense of conveying danger. I'd say some of the older games do a better job of making the player scared of drowning, but this one is particularly good at making the player feel in danger, but a manageable kind of danger. I'd say it definitely succeeds at what it's going for. Asteroid Coaster's area theme goes harder than it needs to, kinda like the options menu, but it's better in my opinion. This act kinda forgoes the orchestral undertones of pretty much every other act and goes straight for the throat of action and intensity. As a supposed final area theme, it's definitely great at conveying that feeling of finale. The sluggishness of it all and the chugging of the guitar and drums really make it feel like things are about to get hard, which I really appreciate. Like I said about the area theme, this one forgoes orchestral undertones and focuses mainly on being a great song, kinda like Sweet Mountain. Here, you're flying along roller coasters and hitting asteroids like a madman. You're put into all these quick-time decision-making moments, and this is there to complement it all the way. From the flying guitars to the intense drum beats, it's really a hell of a good time while listening to this song. Act 2 is pretty similar to Act 1, but the bass player is given a bit more to do this time around. The guitar parts double up at some points, there are a couple more low points in the song, and there's a repeating synth part in the back. Personally, I consider this to be the weakest Asteroid Coaster song because the double up of guitars sounds a little too off-key to be a nice touch and ends up just being annoying. Couple that with the increase in down parts and the guitar never really gets its fill like the original track, and this song really amounts to just being a lesser version of the Act 1 theme of this world. I've already talked about the Purple Frenzy Wisp color music. In summary, it sucks. Good, now I don't have to talk about it again. Next up is another cutscene song, this time being the Nega Wisp Factory. This one is probably one of the best cutscene songs in the whole game because of the nature of the actual cutscene. The cutscene is meant to make you feel curious and scared at the same time. Like you want to know what's going on to the Wisps to turn them into the Nega Wisp, but you also don't want to know. As you've been hearing this song in the back, you've probably been able to gather that this song conveys those feelings perfectly, making it easily one of the best cutscene songs in the whole game. Asteroid Coaster Act 3 is next, and honestly, I'd say on the scale of quality, it lands somewhere between Act 1 and Act 2. Its advantage is it doesn't have the annoying guitar mixing of Act 2, but its disadvantage is it still doesn't have the fun guitar fill from Act 1. I'd say it's closer to Act 1 in quality because the mixing on this one is pretty good. It has some more empty segments like in Act 2, but they're shorter and they're promptly followed by the lead guitar, so that small issue is also rectified. So yeah, good song for the technical final world in the game. Free from Nega Wisp Factory is really nice. Considering a lot of people probably went into this song thinking this was pretty much the end of the game, this feels really triumphant. It has a cute remix of the main theme, along with the snare making it feel like you're finally ready to come home. Honestly, this song kinda feels like something out of Clash of Clans, but that doesn't distract from the calmness of the theme itself. Broken Chains is a brief song that plays demonstrating that chains linking the planets are now broken. And honestly, this is somehow more fitting than the last track. It's grand yet also reserved, the instrumentation is excellent, it's a very nice song and a great way to fake out the real ending of the game for now. Finally Go Home comes next. Man, the devs really waited until the end of the game to stockpile the cutscene songs and make my job harder than it has to be. But this one, like the ones before it, is very nice and really feels like the end of a journey, once again having the snare in the back that makes it feel like you're coming home. And honestly, as a way to not end this game, this really feels excellent. Kinda sucks that Terminal Velocity's area music takes that away. I really like this area theme too. It plays post-destruction cutscenes, so you already have a good idea as to why this theme is as intense as it is. I'm kinda surprised how well made this song is, with the emergency rushing people along to click on levels and not taking in this area theme. From the quick synth parts to the double-timed drums to the basically random synth hits in the back, it really gives off a sense of urgency that really works to the end of the game's benefit. Hyper Go on Surge follows suit, and considering this is the song that plays when everything goes haywire, you know it's gotta be good. Where the previous cutscene songs felt triumphant like you're at the end of a journey, this song really sums up that Godfather 3 quote of, "Just when you thought you were out, we pulled you back in." It's intense, it's scary, befitting of the final uncomfortable threat that would kill all the cast members if they aren't careful. Great work on this one, Sega. The failed plan is Eggman's reaction to the disaster of the cannon. It goes from the obvious frustration and rage of his master plan going haywire to the sudden change in tone where he plans to kill Sonic using other methods, calling the master plan just a setback. It really sets up for an intense finale on the villain side, and the song complements it supremely well. Now for my second favorite song in the whole soundtrack, Terminal Velocity Act 1. This song works on multiple fronts in context to the scene. Not only is it foreboding as you run away from the giant orb of encasing Hyper-Go-On energy, but this song is also badass because, you're running down a giant elevator shaft into space back down to Earth. From the epic guitar lines, both of them in fact, to the epic drums, to the bongos, to the brass hits, they all come together to form an amazing song that I never get tired of. Next up, we have the Nago Wisp armor theme. It borrows leitmotifs from all the other boss themes in the game and builds upon them. I'd say this is my second favorite behind the frigate appearing, mainly because of the echo stinger at the end of that one though. This one is the longest though to accommodate for the cutscene. It's foreboding, it's grand, it's epic, and it's one hell of a boss theme. What can I even say about the final boss theme in this game that I haven't already said back in the top 10 video game final boss themes video? To recap my feelings, this is my personal favorite of all time, even though it's not my favorite song in this soundtrack. Weird how that works, huh? I suggest going to that video to learn more about why I love these two songs so much. The core is actually a cutscene song that plays more than just the one point in the soundtrack. It plays both when Sonic and Tails realize they need to leave, and right before Sonic is about to get sucked into the black hole. Honestly, it works really well for both scenes. Its main purpose is to give off the sense of urgency to the listener, and yeah, this one comes through in spades in that regard. Next up is the final level theme in the game, Terminal Velocity Act 2. It's a shortening of Act 1 of Terminal Velocity, but I really appreciate how the game frames it like you're going to overcome the Orb of Energy. It's also like the original track, and it's kinda sad we don't get to hear more of it during this final level. So yeah, while I may have liked to have heard more of it, I love how it subverts the expectations of what you'd expect. That's how a subversion of expectations works after all. Yakker's Goodbye is the final cutscene song in this game, and honestly, it's really heartfelt. As to complement the scene it plays over, of course. Sonic and Tails are reunited, Eggman has been defeated, and the Wisps are teleporting their planets back to where they used to be. Yakker leaves the main group as everything goes back to normal, and it feels really emotional, even if one of those emotions isn't directly sadness. It's very triumphant, as this is the actual end to your journey. Gotta love that use of Reach for the Stars as well. So yeah, this song is incredibly heartfelt and nice, a great way to complement the end of the story. Finally, we come to the last song in Sonic Colors' soundtrack, and I feel so happy typing that out. Speak for Your Heart. Some people call this song cheesy, but I honestly think it's really endearing. It's better than that cringy Forces ending at least. While Yakker's Goodbye made for a good final cutscene, as a last hurrah to the game, this song perfectly encapsulates that essence. It's an absolute jam, from the guitars to the drums to the vocals. It's really a bop and an amazing way to end this game musically. To summarize the Sonic Colors soundtrack, it's amazing. I know I complained about some segments like some of the act themes and the Gameland songs, but in general, it's honestly one of my favorites in all of gaming. With pretty much all the tracks from Tropical Resort, Sweet Mountain, Starlight, Carnival, Planet Wisp, Aquarium Park, Asteroid Coaster, and Terminal Velocity ranging from okay, at least, and greatest BGM I've ever heard levels of incredible, every single song here has merit in one way or another. And even though this isn't the end of the review series, I could end it here and be perfectly satisfied. Speaking of which, that's going to be the end of this episode of the Sonic Colors review. Next time we'll talk about the worlds, which should weirdly take less time for me to do than this episode. Writing-wise at least, I have no idea how long the editing process is going to be for that. But seriously, have a good day everyone, and thank you for watching. Don't fall